Hello everyone, and welcome back to L. Frank Baum's The Wizard of Oz. Oh, move back out of it in camera. Chapter 13 and 12 and a bit, 12 and a half. Sorry about the uploads going a bit wrong yesterday. I'll try and figure it out before we can go. So as we left, the Wicked Witch of the West was just about to put on her magic hat and summon her winged monkeys for the third and final time. So now the charm began to work. The sky was darkened and a low rumbling sound was heard in the air. There was a rushing of many wings, a great chattering and laughing, and the sun came out of the dark sky to show the Wicked Witch, surrounded by a crowd of monkeys, each with a pair of immense and powerful wings on his shoulders. One, much bigger than the others, seemed to be their leader. He flew close to the witch and said, "You have called us for the third and last time. What do you command?" "Go to the strangers who are within my land and destroy them all, except the lion," said the Wicked Witch. "Bring that beast to me, for I have a mind to harness him like a horse and make him work." "Your command shall be obeyed," said the leader. And then, with a great deal of chattering and noise, the winged monkeys flew away to the place where Dorothy and her friends were walking. Some of the monkeys seized the Tin Woodman and carried him through the air until they were over a country thickly covered with sharp rocks. Here they dropped the poor woodman, who fell a great distance to the rocks, where he lay so battered and dented that he could neither move nor groan. Others of the monkeys caught the Scarecrow and with their long fingers pulled all the straw out of his clothes and head. They made his hat and boots and clothes into a small bundle and threw it into the top branches of a tall tree. The remaining monkeys threw pieces of a stout rope around the lion and wound many coils around his body and head and legs until he was unable to bite or scratch or struggle in any way. Then they lifted him up and flew away with him to the witch's castle, where he was placed in a small yard with a high iron fence around it, so he could not escape. But Dorothy they did not harm at all. She stood with Toto in her arms, watching the sad fate of her comrades and thinking it would soon be her turn. The leader of the winged monkeys flew up to her, his long hairy arms stretched out, and his ugly face grinning terribly. But he saw the mark of the good witch's kiss upon the forehead, and stopped short, motioning to the others not to touch her. "We dare not harm this little girl," he said to them, "for she is protected by the power of good, and that is greater than the power of evil. All we can do is carry her to the castle of the Wicked Witch and leave her there." So carefully and gently they lifted Dorothy in their arms and carried her swiftly through the air until they came to the castle, and where they set her down upon the front doorstep. Then the leader said to the witch, "We have obeyed you as far as we were able. The Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow are destroyed, and the lion is tied up in your yard. The little girl we dare not harm, nor the dog she carries in her arm. Your power over our band is ended, and you will never see us again." Then all the winged monkeys, with much laughing and chattering and noise, flew into the air and were soon out of sight. The Wicked Witch was both surprised and worried when she saw the mark on Dorothy's forehead, for she knew well that neither the winged monkeys nor she herself dare hurt the girl in any way. She looked down at Dorothy's feet, and seeing the silver shoes, began to tremble with fear, for she knew what a powerful charm belonged to them. At first the witch was tempted to run away from Dorothy, but she happened to look into the child's eyes and saw how simple the soul was behind them, and that the little girl did not know the wonderful power the silver shoes gave her. So the Wicked Witch laughed to herself and thought, "I can still make her my slave, for she doesn't know how to use the power." Then she said to Dorothy harshly and severely, "Come with me, and see that you mind everything I tell you. For if you do not, I will make an end of you, as I did the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow." Dorothy followed her through many beautiful rooms in her castle until they came to the kitchen, where the witch bade her clean the pots and kettles and sweep the floor and keep the fire fed with wood. Dorothy went to work meekly, with her mind made up as to work as hard as she could, for she was glad the Wicked Witch had decided not to kill her. With Dorothy hard at work, the witch thought she would go into the courtyard and harness the cowardly lion like a horse. It would amuse her, she was sure, to make him draw a chariot whenever she wished to go to drive. But as she opened the gate, the lion gave a loud roar and bounded at her so fiercely that the witch was afraid and ran out and shut the gate again. "If I cannot harness you," said the witch to the lion, speaking through the bars of the gate, "I can starve you. You shall have nothing to eat until you do as I wish." So after that she took no food to the imprisoned lion, but every day she came to the gate at noon and asked, "Are you ready to be harnessed like a horse?" And the lion would answer, "No. If you come into this yard, I will bite you." The reason the lion did not have to do as the witch wished was that every night, whilst the woman was asleep, Dorothy carried him food from the cupboard, After he had eaten, he would lie down on his bed of straw, and Dorothy would lie beside him and put her head on his soft shaggy mane while they talked of their troubles and tried to plan some way to escape. But they could find no way to get out of the castle, for it was constantly guarded by yellow Winkies, who were the slaves of the Wicked Witch, and were too afraid of her not to do as she told them. The girl had to work hard during the day, and often the witch threatened to beat her with the same old umbrella she always carried in her hand. But in truth, she did not dare strike Dorothy, because of the mark upon her forehead. The child did not know this, and was full of fear for herself and Toto. Once the witch struck Toto a blow with her umbrella, and the brave little dog flew at her and bit her leg in return. The witch did not bleed where she was bitten, for she was so wicked that the blood in her had dried up many years before. Dorothy's life became very sad as she grew to understand that it would be harder than ever to get back to Kansas and Aunt Em again. Sometimes she would cry bitterly for hours, with Toto sitting at her feet and looking in her face, whining dismally to show how sorry he was for his little mistress. Toto did not really care whether he was in Kansas or the Land of Oz, so long as Dorothy was with him, but he knew the little girl was unhappy, and that made him unhappy too. Now the Wicked Witch had a great longing to have her own the silver shoes which the girl always wore. Her bees and her crows and her wools were lying in heaps and drying up, and she had used all the power of the golden cap. But if she could get a hold of the silver shoes, they would give her more power than all the other things she'd lost. She watched Dorothy carefully to see if she ever took off the shoes, thinking she might steal them. But the child was so proud of her pretty shoes that she never took them off, except at night when she took a bath. The witch was much too afraid of the dark to go. The witch is afraid of a lot of things. To dare to go in Dorothy's room at night to take the shoes, and her dread of water was greater than her fear of the dark. So she never came near when Dorothy was bathing. Indeed, the old witch never touched water, nor ever let water touch her in any way. But the wicked creature was very cunning, and finally thought of a trick that would give her what she wanted. She placed a bar of iron in the middle of the kitchen floor, and then by her magic arts made the iron invisible to human eyes, so that when Dorothy walked across the floor, she stumbled over the bar, not being able to see it, and fell at full length. She was not much hurt, but in her fall, one of her silver shoes came off, and before she could reach it, the witch snatched it away and put it on her own skinny foot. The Wicked Witch was greatly pleased with the success of her trick, for as long as she had one of the shoes, she owned half the power of their charm, and Dorothy could not use it against her, even had she known how to. The little girl, seeing as she had lost one of her pretty shoes, grew angry and said to the witch, "Give me my shoe back." "I will not," retorted the witch, "for it is now my shoe and not yours." "You're a wicked creature," cried Dorothy. "You have no right to take my shoe from me." "I shall keep it just the same," said the witch, laughing at her, "and someday I shall get the other one from you too." Riveting. This made Dorothy so very angry that she picked up the bucket of water that stood near and dashed it all over the witch, wetting her from head to foot. Instantly, the wicked woman gave a loud cry of fear, and then Dorothy looked at her in wonder. The witch began to shrink and fall away. "See what you've done," she screamed. "In a minute I shall melt away." "Very sorry indeed," said Dorothy, who was truly frightened to see the witch actually melting away like brown sugar before her eyes. Brown sugar, lovely metaphor. Or simile there. Simile. Lovely simile. Didn't you know water would be the end of me?" asked the witch in a wailing, despairing voice. "Of course not," answered Dorothy. "How should I?" "Well, in a few minutes I shall be all melted, and you will have the castle to yourself. I have been wicked in my day, but I never thought a little girl like you would ever be able to melt me and end my wicked deeds. Look out, here I go." With these words, the witch fell down into a brown, melted, shapeless mass and began to spread over the clean boards of the kitchen floor. Seeing that she had really melted away to nothing, Dorothy drew another bucket of water and threw it over the mess. Then she swept it all out the door, after picking up the silver shoe, which was all that was left of the old woman. She cleaned and dried it with a cloth and put it on her foot again. Then, being at last free to do as she chose, she ran out the courtyard to tell the lion that the Wicked Witch of the West had come to an end, and that they were no longer prisoners in a strange land. And what we're going to do now is we're going to get us back up to speed. We're going to read chapter 13 as well, which is called The Rescue. The Cowardly Lion was much pleased to hear that the Wicked Witch had been melted by a bucket of water, and Dorothy at once unlocked the gate of his prison and set him free. They went in together to the castle, where Dorothy's first act was to call all the Winkies together and tell them that they were no longer slaves. There was great rejoicing among the Winkies, for they had been made to work hard during many years for the Wicked Witch, who had always treated them with great cruelty. They kept this day as a holiday, then and ever after, and spent time in feasting and dancing. If our friends, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, were only with us, said the Lion, I would be happy. Don't you suppose we could rescue them? Asked the girl anxiously. We can try, answered the Lion. So they called the Yellow Winkies and asked if they would help to rescue their friends, and the Winkies said that they would be delighted to do it in all their power for Dorothy, who had set them free from slavery. So she chose a number of Winkies who looked as if they knew the most, and they all started away. They travelled that day and part of the next until they came to the rocky plain where the Tin Woodman lay, all battered and bent. His axe was near him, but the blade was rusted and the handle broke off short. The Winkies lifted him tenderly in their arms and carried him back to the Yellow Castle again, Dorothy shedding a few tears by the way at the sad plight of her old friend, and the Lion looked sober and sorry. When they reached the castle, Dorothy said to the Winkies, Are any of your people tinsmiths? Oh yes, some of us are good tinsmiths, they told her. Then bring them here, she said, and when the tinsmiths came, bringing with them all the tools in their baskets, she inquired, Can you straighten out the dents in the Tin Man, and bend him back into shape again, and solder him together where he is broken? The tinsmiths looked at the woodman carefully, and then answered that they thought they could mend him, so he would be as... turn the page. Good as ever. So they went to work in one of their big yellow rooms of the castle, and worked for 3 days and 4 nights, hammering and twisting and bending and soldering and polishing and pounding at the legs and body and the head of the Tin Woodman, until at last he was straightened out into his old form, and his joints worked as well as ever. To be sure, there were several patches on him, but the tinsmiths did a good job, and as the woodman was not a vain man, he did not mind the patches at all. When at last he walked into Dorothy's room and thanked her for rescuing him, he was so pleased that he wept tears of joy, and Dorothy had to wipe every tear carefully from his face with her apron, so his joints would not be rusted. At the same time, her own tears fell thick and fast at the joy of meeting her old friend again, and these tears did not need to be wiped away. As for the Lion, he wiped his eyes so often with the tip of his tail that it became quite wet, and he was obliged to go out into the courtyard and hold it in the sun till it dried. That's a beautiful scenery there. If only we had the Scarecrow with us again, said the Tin Man. When Dorothy had finished telling him everything that had happened, I should be quite happy. We must find him, said the girl. So she called the Winkies to help her, and they walked all day and part of the next until they came to the tall tree in the branches of which the winged monkeys had tossed the Scarecrow's clothes. It was a very tall tree, and the trunk was so smooth that no one could climb it, but the woodman said at once, I'll chop it down, and then we can get the Scarecrow's clothes. Now, while the tinsmiths had been at work mending the woodman himself, another of the Winkies, who was a goldsmith, had made an axe handle of solid gold and fitted it to the Tin Woodman's axe, instead of the old broken handle. Others polished the blade until all the rust was removed, and it glistened like burnished silver. Ooh, that's a nice image. As soon as he had spoken, the Tin Woodman began to chop. In a short time, the tree fell over with a crash, when the Scarecrow's clothes fell out of the branches and rolled off on the ground. Dorothy picked them up and had the Winkies carry them back to the castle, where they were stuffed with nice clean straw. And behold, here was the Scarecrow, as good as ever, thanking them over and over again for saving him. Now they were reunited. Dorothy and her friends spent a few happy days at the Yellow Castle, where they found everything they needed to make them comfortable. But one day, the girl thought of Aunt Em and said, We must go back to Oz and claim his promise. Yes, said the woodman. At last I shall get a heart, and I shall get my brains, added the Scarecrow. And I shall get my courage, said the Lion. And I shall get back to Kansas, cried Dorothy joyfully. But let us start for the Emerald City tomorrow. This they decided to do. The next day they called the Winkies together and bade them goodbye. The Winkies were sorry to have them go, and they had grown so fond of the Tin Woodman that they begged him to stay and rule over them and the Yellow Land of the West. Finally, they were determined to go. The Winkies gave Toto and the Lion each a gold collar, and to Dorothy they presented a beautiful bracelet studded with diamonds. And to the Scarecrow they gave a gold-headed walking stick to keep him from stumbling. And to the Tin Woodman they offered a silver oil can inlaid with gold and set with jewels. Every one of the travellers made the Winkies a pretty speech in return, and all shook hands with them until their arms ached. Dorothy went to the witch's cupboard to fill a basket with food for the journey, and there she saw the golden cap. She tried it on her head and found it fitted exactly. She did not know anything about the charm of the golden cap, but she saw that it was pretty, so she made up her mind to wear it and carry her sunbonnet in a basket. Then, being prepared for the journey, they all started for the Emerald City, and the Winkies gave them 3 cheers and many good wishes to carry with them. Very good, very exciting. I hope you're enjoying chapter 14 tomorrow, back up to where we should be after a couple of long chapters of plot. I hope you're enjoying. Have a great day. See you later. Bye.